Hello, good morning.
Uh,
Can you hear us?
yeah, good morning, Anshu.
Great.
Hello, I am. Hello,
Yes, we can hear
audio.
you.
Okay, thank you.
One. Can I request everyone to please put their phones on silent mode? Thank you. Good morning, sir. Good to see you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, good morning. I'm sure I can hear you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Great. So we'll start the proceedings of the day. Good morning, everyone. I'm Akanksha Sharma. I work for the ITU area office in Delhi. And a warm welcome to all of you to the third BSG workshop, the third in the series we've done between ITU and DOT, second with NICF, and the first one in Bangalore. And we are glad that we could bring this workshop to Bangalore today. Now, to deliver the welcome address, I would like to call upon stage Ms. Madhavi Das, Director General, NICF.
Thank you, Akanksha. Secretary DOT, Dr. Neeraj Mittal, sir. Dr. Rajesh from IISC, Mr. Shakya, Mr. Robert Clark, who's joined us from ITU Geneva, participants and friends. Let me extend a very, very warm welcome to all of you to this third event that we have regarding standardization and standards in telecom. This third event is an expanded version of what we have attempted earlier. In the first two BSG workshops, we concentrated only on bridging the standardization gap and the procedures that go into it. This workshop takes things one step further. Not only are we going to talk about standardization and how every stakeholder can and must contribute to making of standards, but we would also be talking about the important area of patents with a special reference to standard essential patents or SEPs. Sir, I'm happy to say that this workshop has seen overwhelming response. We've had more than 200 people nominated for this workshop. And for that, I would like to thank the Indian Institute of Science. I would like to thank the Office of CCA Karnataka, who's worked tirelessly behind the scenes to get people on board. This two-day workshop is divided into two parts, really. The first day, we would be talking about standards, their importance in ICT, and also conduct it in a workshop mode. The idea behind the workshop mode, sir, is that essentially we have people from all stakeholder groups here today. So not only do we have people from senior government officials, both from the CCAs and LSAs, as well as from TEC, but we also have the who's who of academia, we have people from industry, and most importantly, I would say we have researchers and students here with us today. And the idea is that these researchers and students would be the one who would be contributing to standard making in this country in the future. So their engagement we felt was extremely important, and it's very fitting that IISC has chosen to help us to host this event. We also would like to say a big thank you to ITU. ITU Local Area Office has worked hard to put this together. Mr. Robert Clark, who's traveled all the way from Geneva to share things with us. So again, welcome, and we wait to hear now from Secretary DOT. Welcome once again, sir.
Looks like. Hello, sir. Over to you. So we're not getting the audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning to everybody. I'm really happy to be here today in this Bharat 6G vision translating research to standards. I think the title is critical as we move forward into our goals of leading India into a leadership position into 6G research, 6G implementation, standards, patents. India has seen green shoots in its capacity to be able to contribute to high technology interventions in telecommunication sector. While the economy is growing rapidly and we are hurtling from 3.5 trillion to maybe $7.5 trillion by end of 2031, in between crossing the mark of 5 trillion, being in the top 2 or 3 economies in the world, India is seen by the world as a country that can be trusted. Its solutions can be deployed in various countries. This interest has seen renewed spike with our efforts in developing 4G indigenous stack, our forays into multiple solutions, both SA and NSA in 5G, our standard which was adopted at the ITU, the 5GI, our intervention in the 6G space of ubiquitousness, the growth in startups, making us again in the top 1 or 2 or 3 countries, from a mere few thousand startups to 3-4 lakh startups as we speak, multiple unicorns, a renewed commitment by the government through PLI scheme to produce domestically. The telecom PLI specifically encouraging design-led incentives so that the design and manufacture can go hand in hand here. And all these developments being seen with the on-ground implementation as well, where 5G was one of the fastest rollout in the country. We see green shoots in terms of indigenous 4G, its rollout happening in the country. And all these put together give us a segue into what we are about to do today and possibly for the next 5 years. I recall one Peter Drucker aphorism where he said that the best way to predict future is to create it yourself. And I think this workshop possibly would be one of those events where academia, industry, Department of Telecom, it's all the constituents come together and understand what would it take for India to create a leadership position in the 6G technology as it evolves. We know that all these technologies have if a standard gets notified on a date X, a relentless work of 10 years has gone behind it. And therefore, we are already halfway through. If these standards and technologies will get fructified in the next 5 years, maybe 5 years work has already gone through. We have finalized roughly 200 crores worth of proposals on 6G with the aim to do that and to kickstart this process. And I'm sure a lot of beneficiaries of that are there in this audience, both educational institutions, academic institutions, and industry. Standard essential patents, FRAND, all are regimes which have both monopolistic character and a character that they are fair. And these are, in real sense, a game which is played to control the entry into the telecom research and evolving technologies. Therefore, we need to understand the game before we can play it. And I think there can be nothing better than this effort which has been put together brilliantly by NCA to bring you all together in the crucible of the city where technology really breathes and comes to life, which is Bangalore. And I'm really happy that ITU, Robert has also joined. There are foreign speakers, there are domestic speakers, there is representation from academia, students, and I hope that you will all be able to actually come out for the government with some policy recommendations. What steps do we need to take to make this a reality? It's a 2-day workshop, and I would have loved to actually participate and become a little more wiser with all of you. But unfortunately, maybe we'll request to read the proceedings of the workshop at the end of tomorrow to be able to get the sense out of your recommendations. So I wish you all the best. I hope you have a very fruitful interaction, and I hope this will not be the end of this workshop. We will continue to have this as a continuing effort between all of us so that we can look back 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now and say that we started this effort and we became really successful. So thanks a lot. Best of luck to all of you.
Thank you so much, sir, for those encouraging remarks. And I think I agree that the moment is now. Let's create the future together. And what better place to do it than Bangalore, and especially this institute, IISc, which I call, the temple of knowledge. So great. Thank you so much, sir. We'll keep you posted about the proceedings of the workshop. And yeah, it would have been nice to have you in person, but this has been great to have you join us through video. I would now like to call upon Dr. Rajesh S., Professor, IISc, for his address.
Distinguished members on the days, distinguished members who are attending online, participants, welcome to the Indian Institute of Science. Many of you might be wondering, this institution, which was founded in 1909 as an institute of research, why might this institution be supporting or hosting a workshop on translating research to standards? I want to highlight certain important points related to where an institution like the Indian Institute of Science can come in. When we were conceived in 1909, formed in 1909 as an institute of research, the two departments that were the first departments at the institute were electrical technology and general chemistry. These were the ones where it was thought that there is knowledge that needs to be translated. 1909 was around the time when we were doing large-scale electrification. And electrical technology was one of the key things that we needed to translate from knowledge to practice. There is a knowledge to doing gap, a no-do gap. And I think institutions like ours can come in to look at this knowledge to doing gap or the no-do gap and understand where there are the challenges here and create knowledge that can essentially help us bridge this gap. And I think that's where this particular institution comes into the picture, and research institutions in general come into the picture. With respect to the specifics of this particular topic, which is wireless communication and standards associated with that, there is already activity that IISc has contributed to. For example, many of you might be familiar with the WCDMA short scrambling code. The short scrambling code is a design that has come from one of the professors at the Indian Institute of Science. and it has made it to the 3G standard. This was in the mid-90s. There is also a recent development of codes for satellite communication for the NAVIC satellite standard, and that's something that has made it to the NAVIC standard, and these codes are actually operational. Images are being transmitted from the satellite to the Earth using these particular codes. So I think there is a lot that universities can offer, and I hope that this particular workshop will facilitate more of those transfers. With those few words, I'm delighted to see that the Department of Telecommunication and the ITU have come together, and happy that you have chosen the Indian Institute of Science as the venue for this particular workshop. And I hope all of you have a very fruitful workshop. Welcome to the Indian Institute of Science once again.
Thank you, Professor Rajesh, for your kind words and also for being the hosts for this workshop. I would now like to call upon Mr. R. Shakya, who is the Senior DDG at DOT. He is an important bridge between ITU and DOT and has been crucial in putting together this workshop.
Good morning to all. Respected Secretary Dr. Mittal, Ms. Madhvi Das, DG ICA, Mr. Robert, Professor, without whose involvement probably we would have not been here, the dignitaries of the dais, senior officers from the DOT and the other government units, all the participants coming from the different sectors, and finally, the future of the country and the future to make the title true. The young students who are going to convert their research into the standards, and probably today we are just trying to have another seed which is going to take a final shape in the due course. Few things which are important for us to speak. One is, if you look into the scientific research contributions from the country, we are fourth. And the number of papers goes in millions. If you see the conversion of these research papers into the patents, unfortunately, we are much behind. And that is where requirement of such workshop had arisen from. You all know, till 2018 and 19, we were around 40 in the rank. In last few years, we had done nicely, and we had reached to the position of 20, even in the innovation index and all. But thing is, what are the things which are lagging us in not converting our research into the final products? And few things based on our understanding and the discussion with all of you together, what had come true is, first of all, there was feeling that probably there is a shortage of the funds which are not available or not being pumped in by the industry and the government. Now, on behalf of the government, since I'm representing the DOT here, let me share with happiness, sir has already given the direction therein. That is, the Department of Telecommunication has created a fund called TDTF, and wherein you are going to have 500 crores as the research money which can be spent on the research. And with that research, it doesn't end only for the purpose of making the papers. So first request is, do not bother for the funds. It's not only the DOT. Even the Ministry of Electronics IT is having about 1,000 crores for the research and development. If you add DST, we have similar number. So as far as government is concerned, I think there is no dearth of money. There is no reason why should anybody should bother for having the money coming from. Then, as you all know, another pillar of the ecosystem which has nicely come up, we are already third in the startup ecosystem. That means if somebody is trying to start, there is supporting system available in terms of many ways. And more than the startups, which are about 1.4 lakhs today, converting that small group into the unicorns, right, is the biggest strength of this country. We are highest in the way last 2-3 years had come. Other ecosystem, what has been created with the able guidance and the leadership of Dr. Mittal and the ministry, what we had come up with, it's not only the TDDF fund, there is a PLI, as sir has rightly mentioned, for the production support. We have innovation center set up in the CDOT, Delhi, wherein you can come. We had also set up innovation center along with ITU in Delhi, right? Then, under the TEPC program, you can go abroad to showcase your products. You can have technology test trials carried out in the BSNL, and that is the best possible example what we can have, the research in the partnership of the government and the private sector, that is CDOT and the TCS and Tejas could come together, and we could deploy 4G commercially available in the network of the BSNL. Now, if you have some products newly available, if we have something where you want to get your product tested and deployed, there are provisions within the government, and the current CMD in the BSNL is, I think, the one of the best brains which can make the innovations, convert it into the products. So friends, our request is kindly join the research. Typically, to meet the immediate goal, that is up to 2030, we had come out with the 10% of the IPRs in the 6G. But that doesn't end there. We can continue work. We have the standard and SDN, software-defined networks, which is proven by all of us. Now, those software-defined networks have to be seen practically working all across the globe based on your efforts. So with the request to all of you that we have large number of study groups in the ITU, especially if you look for the standardization section. We have now 11, and this is the most opportune time where you can see the working of the ITU, since we are going to host WTSA from the 15th October to the 24th of the October, and that is going to be followed by the Global Standard Symposium on the 14th of October. So all of you are invited to join there, participate there, learn the process, how you can be the big change maker and be the change maker. With this, I would like to congratulate the entire team of the DOT, ITU, ICA, especially IISc, and all of you, and pray God to come out with the brilliant recommendations to fulfill this gap and make the title happening in true spirit. With this, I close my words. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you so much, sir. I think it's really useful to know about all the government schemes. I really hope that together as a group we will be able to make use of some of these investments. And we'll talk more about WTSA and the ITU area office tomorrow. And today, of course, we focus on standardization. Now, lastly, for the opening session, we have Mr. Robert Clark, who's advisor ITU. I would like to invite you, please.
Thank you, Akanksha, and thank you to the hosts and organizers, the NCA, the ministry, and particularly to IISc for their support in organizing and encouraging such great participation at this week's workshop. This really is a fantastic venue for an activity like this, and I think it does pull together so many of the ideas that the previous speakers have talked about. It's an evolution of the last 100 years of development, and I'm delighted to represent ITU as part of this overall initiative, working with India, which has been incredibly productive over recent years and promises to continue through activities like this. I hope we can build on the previous 2 workshops we've held this year. This is the biggest event so far, and I think it's the most diverse group of stakeholders as well, which I think is so important to cover ministry and national administration, academic institutions and industry, both operators and manufacturers. I'll say a lot more detail about the work of ITU over the coming days, but just to understand that our work is very much complementary to the work of all of you, and I very much welcome the opportunity to engage with you as established players in the industry, and particularly with the new players, with the students who will be the standards makers of the future. What I hope to do is break down some of the barriers of understanding to help you engage and help you fulfill the objectives that we've heard described earlier today. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, we come to the closing of the opening session. But before all the participants go back to their seats, can I ask everyone to please assemble for a group photo? Thank you so much, everyone. Now, without further ado, let's begin the sessions. To start the proceedings, we have the first panel discussion on standardization in the field of ICT. And I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Shakya, who's the moderator for the session, and invite the panelists to please take their positions on stage. Dr. Kumar Sivarajan, CTO of Tejas. Dr. Rajesh is already here. Shri Pradeepta Biswas from IISc. And Dr. Pamela Kumar, who's the Chief Strategy Advisor from FSID.
So let me start with the introduction and come out with certain things before we go on the topic. As we rightly mentioned, the primary requirement to come out VSG, why we are having so many third in this year itself. And the first is, India has set up now ITU area office, which is unique, along with the Innovation Center. India is hosting World Standardization Assembly for the Telecommunications of the ITU. In addition to that, large number of center of excellences have been set up. And the primary requirement is what the knowledge Indians do have. How this knowledge is getting translated may not be in terms of the IPRs filed by the Indian entities, but a lot many IPRs are filed by the multinational companies which are being generated by our own brains. So it is most important for us that if we want to really take forward this country, we have to do something on the hyper scale with the leapfrog kind of the approach, so our economy can get real benefits that of. In terms of the United Nations scheme, we all know bridging the divide is the primary goal And that goal gets fulfilled even by bridging the standardization gap. Because that will help in eliminating poverty, so another goal get resolved. Since it is going to be done along with the partnership of industry, private sector, public sector, all together, so we are able to accomplish the SDG goal 17. So why one stroke we are able to achieve many things? That is the primary reason we want to have this workshop here. And I am happy to have very learned, knowledgeable, not in terms of only theory, but who had converted their efforts into the real field. ISC, I think I have nothing to tell about, you all know the history. And if you see, some of us, the youngsters in the government, which may not be knowing, we would have heard the name of the CERT-IN, that is the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team. It got born here, right? Somebody would have heard of the CARE, Center for Artificial Intelligence and Scientific Research, CAIR, robotics, sorry, with the DRTO. It was born in this campus. My friends who are there in this room, the National Center for Communication Security, NCCS, of the DOT has born in this campus. So I think we are at the right place to start and kick off the things. And I'm sure we will have something very great to announce maybe after a few years, that the initial seeds of the bridging the standardization also took place in this great institution. Friends, we have two learned professors in this, right? They all are known to most of the people here. And then we have Mr. Kumar, who has outperformed in showing the world that the radio access network in 4G, 5G can be designed, developed, manufactured, and deployed in country. And that is what his company Tejas has done. Ms. Pamela Kumar is known for this city very well. She has been DG for our TSDSI. So in fact, she is the true power, what we call the women power, which can lead the standardization in this country. We all know what the growth TSDSI had taken place in few years. Now she is in the another role at Bangalore, and I'm sure her new venture will also have the same heights. With this, may I request in the order of presentations or the speech, the way our professor would like to have, or let me start with Mr. Kumar Shivarajan to give his presentation. And he had the presentation, so Kunal kindly help us in getting a presentation put on. Thank you.
Okay, so while they bring up the presentation, maybe I'll do a few preliminaries. Am I audible at the back? Yeah, okay. So first, you can, I won't be talking about that right now. Okay, I'll come there. So first, standards and research, it's an oxymoron in the sense they don't fit together, right? So if you're in the pharma field, you would do your research to find a new drug for cancer or maybe weight loss, even better than cancer, okay? And you would not standardize it. You want to be the only one who is producing it. So, and if you standardize something so that everybody can make it, right? And that's what's the fun in that research. Okay, maybe you get some name, but otherwise you shouldn't be doing both. But telecom not just only wireless in telecom, the whole 3GPP is an exemption to this. Because normally, if you were to make a standard out of some work that you have, some research, you're not, in most fields, you're expected to give up any rights to patents and royalty. And that's how it becomes a standard. But the exemption is 3GPP. By the way, 3GPP is NGPP. It used to be the 3G Partnership Forum, but now it's gone to 4G and 5G and 6G. So there's an exemption, and you can actually make your patented technology part of the standard, provided you agree to make it available to everybody on fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory terms, FRAND terms. So this is why only in this field you have patents and research sort of merging together. It doesn't happen anywhere else. I was in telecom, non-wireless for 15 years. We never heard of SCPs, okay, in optical networking and so on. So that's sort of the basics of this. Now, why should we worry about it, and why should we worry about it as a country? So if you start making wireless equipment, which is, in my company we make base station equipment, infrastructure equipment. CDOT makes the core, which is also part of the infrastructure. Actually, there are very few Indian companies who make phones. There were companies which used to assemble phones. There are a few, but nobody makes it from scratch in the sense starting from designing. But most of the money is in phones. So I also want to tell you that a lot of the work we need to do is to enable a phone ecosystem in India where we can design and make phones. Because the amount of money people spend on phones is dwarfed by how much money is spent in the infrastructure. Because everyone in this room probably spends 15,000-20,000 rupees, if not every year, every 2 years on the phone. Now compare that to how much you spend on your phone bill, which is negligible, and the telecom companies make a fraction of your phone bill. So that should already tell you that what you spend on the phone is probably several times what is spent on the entire telecom infrastructure, because what you spend on the phone bill is what pays for everything and profits, and that's dwarfed by how much you spend on the phone. So long term, the goal should be that we achieve some level of indigenization in telephone technology. Right? Somebody should make phones, design phones, and in phones you pay a lot of royalty, okay, to what is the patents underlying the phones, and that's actually the biggest outflow. So most of the cases you would have heard of, Ericsson versus Lava, Ericsson versus somebody else, and all that is all for phone royalty. Okay, so I want to set that context. So now royalty has to be paid, but it's only a question of where you pay it, right? So we would like, as a country, to save money on royalty payments, right? So now we'd like to save money on oil imports, we'd like to save money on telecom imports, and part of that for phones is to pay, is to save money on outflow of royalty, foreign exchange, right? So we get self-sufficient. We are happy to pay. So phone manufacturers who would come up for 6G would rather pay IIT, IISCs, and Indian companies rather than pay overseas, because then that helps the country in sort of foreign exchange and so on. So that's sort of the broad context of what we need to do and why we need to do this, own standard essential patents. Okay? Yeah, I heard concerns. Says, why should I do all this patenting work and give it up for free? Nobody is saying give it up for free. Okay, just saying earn the royalty, but earn it here. Okay, and you can earn from overseas too. So that's sort of a very broad context, which is not on the slides. Okay, so key issues now. Who should work on this, right? So before we started this, industry would go and make product development. Okay, if you have to pay some royalty, you pay some royalty, but usually that was not a big deal. It was embedded in the chips, but not in wireless. In wireless, you can buy the chip, but you still have to pay the royalty. Okay, academics was focused on doing research. They didn't usually worry about standardization. Okay, if I get the slide, I can talk to that. Okay, so, and I think Professor Rajesh and others will talk about it. It's very hard to convince academics to go work on standards research. They rather work on research, which is more productive in terms of publications. But I'll leave that. Now, there's also other barriers which actually the government helped to solve. To participate in the 3GPP standards, you need to travel to every meeting. And actually, you have to be present there. You cannot do all this virtual business, okay? So that means 10, 12 people from every organization have to spend few lakhs every 2 months. And I think government has been extremely helpful in generously funding travel for all academic institutions to be able to participate. And that has made a big difference. Now we see dozens of people, maybe 50 people in an I3GPP meeting. It used to be 2 or 3, 5 years ago. Okay, so now what do we need to do in industry? And I'm trying to do something similar in my company. Okay, we have a dedicated standards team. So it's going to look at what's happening in standards. So this can't be somebody's part-time job. So it has to be a full-time job of you're looking at standards, attending every meeting, and driving creation of patents related to the standards that are going to come. And that's the trick. You need to anticipate. So if you already have a patent and you take it to standards and say, no, make it standards essential, people are going to find a way not to make it standards essential. Okay, so you have to sort of drive this at the same time. You have to have patents that will become standards essential rather than that are already standards essential. Because standards are evolving, and you are also patenting at the same time. And that's the trick that all of us need to learn. And I think we should collaborate between industry and academia. In Tejas, I started a collaboration with CVIT, which is associated with IIT Madras, in terms of, because they've been working with 3GPP for a long time. It's a teach us how to do this. Maybe there are other ways in which industry and academia can collaborate, consulting perhaps, because there are a lot of academics who are experts, but whose expertise can be channelized in specific areas. Okay. Finally, I want to say this, for certain companies, it's a company effort. Like say for Ericsson, it's not a Swedish effort, it's an Ericsson effort. For Nokia, it's a Nokia effort, not a Finnish effort. But for newcomers, for China, I think for a long time, it was a Chinese government effort. I think they all work together. I think Korea is also supported, Samsung is supported by the Korean Research Institute. I think for India, given that, we're not 100 years old into telecom, it's to be a national effort so that we all come together, work together as a team in ITU and so on, and further the national cause of becoming able to produce the next generation of telecom technology in India, become sort of a telecom player. And this is consistent with ambition across. We wanted to make pharmaceuticals for the world, and we want to make cars for the world, and then we want to make telecom equipment for the world. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Now, only one observation which I want to share with you. Professor Kumar said that earlier patents have the different definitions, and telecommunication, especially in the wide lines, royalty is paid once and there is nothing. But the information which may be already known to all of you, can we understand the revenue being earned by the Microsoft only for licensing of your softwares is much higher than the entire IT software export India does. And that is the reason we want to have all of you to work together, because now that hardware is going to be standardized, it is going to be off the shelf. Entire functionality is going to be built on with the software-defined networks. And each software application is going to have its own licensing, right? So this is the place where exactly I remember the statement made by our beloved Prime Minister in the last India Mobile Congress, that was, future is now. Because SDN is something wherein the prowess of country has already been seen. IT development we know, coding we know better than anybody else. So this is our time, this is our future, and have the SAPs generated on your name and get the continuous revenue coming from all over the globe, right? So that is the message we want to give from this platform. And we had acknowledged, I request the Madam Das and the team of the ICA Finance to take care that yes, we had done in the equipment side. On the customer premises equipment also, there is a requirement to work from the scratch, not only the manufacturing, but research wherein we can have the maximum number of the component level things coming from there, so it will protect us from the security hazards, it will protect us from the shortage of components and all. So probably, yes, we will take that forward. And with this, may I have the honor to invite Professor Rajesh, who is the Dean in EECS ISC. And
Thank you. Please, am I audible at the back? Anyone?
I think we can
Yeah,
clap
thank you.
for the professor.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor and a privilege to be here and to say a few words about how university could perhaps contribute. Before I begin, I wanted to maybe make some additions to perhaps what Dr. Kumar Sivarajan said about wireless perhaps being the only one where standardization has happened and you give up the standards, give up the rights, or at least do it in some fair and reasonable and non-discriminatory terms. I think there has also been another domain, image processing, where there have been ideas which have also been given away for standards to essentially make them easy to adopt and become widespread. So with that initial remark, let me address perhaps the question of, is university a place where there can be good research which can lead to standards? And I want to actually build on some of the examples that I highlighted in the introduction. Let me begin with the first of the examples, which is the WCDMA short scrambling code. That short scrambling code came out of a paper that researchers had put up. And then between that paper and turning it into something that is of immediate use, there was a very short turnaround time. And it made it to the WCDMA standard. And it made it to the WCDMA standard because I think the faculty member that designed this code had an interest in making sure that this particular idea was something that could be beneficial, that something that could be translated into a thing that could be used. And so I think there is that element of interest to take something from an idea conception stage to practice that is essential. And if it is there, I think these things can happen. A second example that I want to give is again the example of a code for satellite communication. Yet again, this was a problem, an unmet need, a challenge on getting an appropriate design with constraints, and those constraints were brought to the academics' attention. And the academic out of interest came up with another design. And this design then took, it took quite a bit of iteration from the design to the from the initial design to the final design. And eventually it made it once again to the standard, to the NAVIC standard. There are also other examples that I want to give. For example, I remember in 1994 when turbo codes were discussed. Turbo codes are codes which operate very close to Shannon capacity on the white Gaussian channel, white Gaussian noise channel. These codes were first introduced at a theory symposium, IEEE Information Theory Symposium in 1994. And I think immediately after they were introduced, there were quite a few questions as to whether there were some issues with the design, there were some issues with the analysis. But then once people were convinced, from there to making it to the 3GPP standard was just a couple of years. Another example is Alamuthi code, or space-time transmit diversity. That's another one which came out in 1998. By the time 3GPP standards were being discussed, 1999 or thereabouts, it was already in there as STTD in those standards. There are also many that were discovered in the 60s. I'll give you one example, low density parity check codes. Those came out of the university, out of a theoretical, out of a need to analyze codes in a somewhat abstract and theoretical way. And then I think the environment was just about right when turbo codes were discussed and iterative decoding frameworks were being thought about, that those low density parity check codes eventually made it into the standard. So these are all examples of things that come in the university environment where ideas, these are crucible for ideas, and these ideas get forgotten sometimes, or get adopted sometimes very quickly, but then get rediscovered and so on. So I think it's very important to understand how these ideas get generated, and also what are all the challenges in adopting these ideas into practice. And I think those challenges involve, there are some, after all of the researchers, the faculty members, the students, etc., are in an ecosystem, and there are people challenges involved in that. There are also challenges related to technology perhaps not being right, or maybe a little too early, or sometimes a little too late. All of these challenges are things that we need to understand and address. And I think that in itself is actually a research question. And I think those kinds of research questions also need to be addressed. And to some extent, we'll be seeing some of those in the ITU meeting, in the ITU workshop, ITU DOT workshop here. With respect to perhaps how more of university research can essentially be moving in this particular direction, I think the key thing is to keep in mind that there is an important component of discovery research that must happen. I want to state that and emphasize that. But I think what we also need is for research of the one which translates from knowledge to doing. What are the gaps? What are the facilitators? What are the barriers? I think we need that kind of research also to come into the picture, and those ideas being turned into practice. And also we need many of our colleagues to understand that there is a promise in taking many of these discoveries to practice, and who best to do it than perhaps those that have discovered these ideas. I think we should understand what are all the barriers for our colleagues to adopt this particular approach and see if we can address them. And one particular barrier that I do see in this context is the barrier of perhaps a community and recognition for this kind of activity, because I think it's an important activity. It's something which has a lot of impact, but it's also something that's hard to do. You need a lot of support to be able to do it. You need a lot of time commitment to be able to do it, resources to do it. When I was building chips in the industry for wireless modems, we were just doing. We did not go to the standards meetings and participate in the standards bodies activities. However, there was a very strong team that we were interacting with very closely that enabled us to understand what was happening in the standards, and then make sure that the products that we were developing were aligned with what the standards bodies were moving towards. That way, the doing gap between what the ecosystem wanted and what products we were developing could be bridged. I think similarly, an ecosystem needs to be developed amongst perhaps in the university environment that can look at what research is coming out there, what are the needs, what are the standardization requirements, and then have these two communities talk to each other so closely that they often go to standards, professors go to standards meetings and so on, in addition to their research meetings, and also those working in standards go to research meetings in addition to their standard meetings. I think if we can bring about this interdisciplinarity and also mixing of the communities, that would be wonderful. I think those, I feel, are the ones that university research could help in bridging this no-do gap. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. And I think I'll have a round of question afterwards. So may I invite Mr. or Dr. Pradeepta Viswas, who is professor here. And let me also share one more thing. He's also the vice chair in one of the study groups of the ITU. So with this, may I have the honor to invite Mr. Pradeepta Viswas to share his words.
Good morning, everyone. And thanks to DOT for organizing this event here, and also thanks to the audience for turning up, which is rather considered early morning. So my journey on standardization sector has started just after my PhD back in Cambridge, and as Professor Rajesh already pointed out, being academics, we were not very much concerned about standards. So around 2011, I was doing my first postdoc as part of a EU project, European Union project. And that time there was a requirement from the funding agency that we should contribute towards standards. And I joined one focus group in ITU on accessibility. And then it was a wonderful journey that in the last WTSA in 2020, I was elected as a vice chair of study group 9 again. Many thanks to DOT and my parent institute for supporting my candidature. Now in terms of the specifically my personal interest is I am promoting something called common user profile. So it's, of course, it started from research, and this is slightly unlikely the regular network standard. It's more application related standards, but a very ambitious one where we try to personalize user interfaces across devices and across applications with a focus on people with different range of abilities. And in doing so, as someone tell that the journey is more important than the destination, we spin out multiple reports. The latest one is, you can Google that ITUT report on concept of common user profile. And we are yet to reach consensus on the recommendation, so I am leaving it to my ITU colleagues to explain the terms on approval and consent. And in fact, the study group 9 meeting is presently happening in Tokyo. And I also do some work on metaverse, rather it's a recent work. You can consider it as an application of 6G. And I welcome you all to, during coffee break, you can go outside and see some interesting demonstration with all these augmented virtual mixed reality systems. Now, in terms of standards, that yes, I should talk on both sides, that being academic, many times we work on a much smaller time scale. So when a PhD student is coming, it's a typical IISc scenario that after 2 years, he is giving an exam. After 3 years, technically we should leave him to fly on his own. We also have our, say, appraisals in yearly or maximum in 5-yearly terms. But when we talk about standards, that this is something which is a accumulation effort of at least decades work. So many times it happens to academia that we do not have enough incentive towards standards. Rather, we go for more low-hanging fruits like publishing research papers, improving our H index, etc. For students also, they go for papers, maybe campusing for students. But then I am really grateful that the DOT is now taking this effort towards standards, because during the past 10 years, I attended many standardization events, and many times we were overwhelmed by the participation from our neighboring countries in Southeast Asia. And in particular, I was amazed to see that how much effort they put on collecting use cases, proposing standards, and you won't believe that I also sit on a panel on metaverse standard for BIS, and how many BIS standards came for comments, and BIS just passed them on because there is not any expert comments on those subjects. And I am here to blame myself also, that many times I also do not give enough time on the particular standards where I could have commented. So many times what I feel that in academia, the importance of standard is often not perceived. And many times of course, we do fantastic research, and that makes IISc standing apart. But then when we try for the final deployment, then we depend on someone else or follow the norms. But many times we do not think that we are also being capable of creating the norms. And here I think that again I will borrow this famous phrase from this movie Top Gun, that it's not the plane, it's the pilot who are flying. So it's not the organization or the institute, it's the people like you, the students or the people in academia, that it has to be a collective effort, that we have to build conscience, because I can share with my small experience that it's very difficult to create consensus on a global level, and it can always bolster when we have the consensus at the national level, and it cannot come from a single person's effort or a single institute effort or from DOT itself. So it should be a collective effort, and when we can show off that, see, we created this standard and it is ready to go out, we have products ourselves, many of our neighboring countries are doing so, then we will be in a much better stage to convince the rest of the world that, are you coming on the boat or you want to let us go alone? And I think that way, when we will enforce this collective effort, of course, DOT is very supportive of that, we can really make a mark towards standard, and that will be beneficial for all of us. I think at this I will stop talking, and thanks again to the audience and the host for organizing the event here. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Viswas. So, as the last speaker, and now we know, everybody speaks of the woman power. So, at least among the 4 speakers, we have one. So, she represents the 25%, which is slightly less than what the government has mandated to be. Next time, we will ensure that we have the due representation, more than the expectations. And the experience what she had in the field of standardization, I'm sure that is going to benefit when she talks to us. So may I have the honor to invite Ms. Pamela Kumar. Kindly invite her with the big hands up.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction and all that encouragement. So I think we've heard these real nuggets of wisdom, and the other panelists really represent, I mean, all that we needed to know on how to crack this problem, jatil samasya, right? This tough problem of gaining leadership. So let's start with what the secretary said. The secretary said, what will it take for India to take a leadership position in 6G? Okay, that is the big problem statement that we're trying to address. Okay, and he said the best way to predict the future is to create it. So how can we become part of this creation of 6G, right? Then he said that SEP is a game that is played. So this is what we have learned in our journey in standards, and Dr. Kumar Shivrajan emphasized that. We didn't know that. When I took the role as DG TSDSI, people were very comfortable with just, so somebody else has defined the standards and we build the products to those standards. Why should we spend so much time and energy to go and influence this, right? So that awareness and that internalization was not there. We had to walk the path to understand this, right? So this game, in order to play this game, we need to learn the rules of the game. And that's extremely critical, okay? And Kumar mentioned, right, how wireless is different from the other places. The combination of research and standards, right? China today has 1.6 lakh patents in 6G, okay? They have covered every single base possible. And where are we? The rest of the world is still trying to define what 6G is going to be all about, right? So how did they do it, right? Obviously, the researchers were part of it. Their research community, when we used to go to ITU, the professor would be sitting right there, along with the people from industry, Huawei and ZTE, and the government people. But the spokesperson would be the faculty. As he said, they need to speak up, they need to counter, they have the knowledge, they have the credibility, right, where they can put your case forward, okay? So, and of course, Professor Rajesh Sundareshan gave us so many examples of how the time it has taken for research to be translated into standards is going down. Now, why did pi by 2 BPSK with spread spectrum shaping, which was India's contribution in 5G, why did it take so long? You know when it was patented? It was patented, I think, somewhere around 2006, 2008 time frame. And this journey started then to make it part of 4G, and we failed. Our researchers went there, and it was a small thing. If this same waveform was coming from Finland or US or UK, it would have been a non-issue. It is half a paragraph in 10,000 pages of standards, right? It would have been a non-issue to incorporate it. But we struggled from 2008 to 2022. Why? Because we had to learn the rules of the game, right? It took us a long time to get our act together, to bring consensus within the nation, and then take it to the global, to go there and believe that because your code is so good, you're going to win it. It's not going to happen, right? And Professor Pradipta is, of course, the living example of somebody who started going into standards from his PhD time. And that's why we coined the term standards-driven research. And we'll dwell more about it as I go forward. So let's step back a little, okay? And let's take some other analogies. What does it take to win gold medals at the Olympics? You may have the fastest runner, the fastest swimmer, the best shooter, but you will get maybe one or you may get two. And as long as that person is competing, you will stay at the numbers. We sent 117 people to the Olympics, and what did we come back with? Right? We used to have the highest records in cricket in the times of Sunil Gavaskar and others. You know, whether the bowlers or the wicket keeper or the batsman, they held the world records at an individual level, but we used to never get the World Cup. What did it take for us to become a contender in the finals consistently, right? It took a lot of effort. It took a lot of fundamental change. Today, our professors in this Indian Institute of Science, where we struggle to get our ranking in the top 50, but you look at their ranking in the high citation index, they are in the single digits. They are way up there. Our faculty are way up there in terms of their global recognition. But as a whole, we don't get any world. We are not getting global market share. We are all struggling, right? Okay. So that's the problem we need to crack. Okay. And so what did we do in TSDSI in our journey to do this 5G? There was a lot of learning. Okay. And some of that learning has translated into practice. A lot of comfort and trust was developed between academia and the government, and we all realize that we are in this together. Unless we understand that we are in this together, we break through our barriers at our level and then put a joint force forward. Okay, that was a big learning. And also there's a big learning of that there is a standards life cycle. We just can't go to the standards bodies and start putting something and expecting that it will. There is a standardization life cycle that we need to address to have the impact, to gain leadership in 6G, as they are saying, right? It starts with pre-standards. Pre-standards is what? And we've taken some great steps in pre-standards, right? With all the money that's being pumped into research, with all the realization that standards and patenting is also one of the KRAs that we need to start focusing on, okay? With the setting up of 5G use case labs, understanding what are our use cases, not just accepting what somebody else's use cases and technology developed to their use cases, and force fitting it here at high costs and low penetration, right? If we want to embrace new and emerging technology, we need to be out there with our use cases and influencing technology to be developed for our use cases, right? So that is the pre-standards. And then it is the standards. The standardization cycle, as he said, the realization, I remember one of the first meetings we had on national standardization strategy, Nirmala Sitharaman was chairing that, right? And the basic insight that came out of that meeting was that the people we sent from India to one meeting and then the second are not the same. And why is that? Because of the travel rules in government. When you want to travel abroad, okay, you don't get funding for the next meeting. Somebody else gets the funding. What can a person represent? How can he become part of that nexus where the consensus is being driven? If he doesn't go meet, you miss one meeting and your entire efforts are gone. Okay? So that realization came to us by participating in the standardization game, the standardization process, right? When to submit what is evaluation. When we came to evaluation cycle in ITU, I thought there would be a very objective technical evaluation. But that's not the case. Everything here is just subjective and consensus. There is no real technical deliberation, assessment, objective assessment that is done of the standard that you propose, right? If everybody agrees, that's evaluation, okay? So all this learning happens when you actually participate, when you actually play that game. When you actually go to the Olympics and you have to bring your weight down, all that stuff you learn only when you go there, right? You may be the best wrestler sitting here, but only when you go there you understand at what time they measure the weight and how many hours you have to bring it down. I mean, this is all learning, and this is how standards works. In ITU, they'll have that 8 o'clock meeting, and that's more important than the official 10, the pre-meetings that happen, and the post meetings after the 10 to 5 official meetings, what happens after 5 o'clock, and those meetings are more important, and the meetings that happen between 8 to 10 are more important than what happens in 10 to 5. Okay? But in 10 to 5, you better not miss those 15 minutes when your thing is going to get discussed, right? So this is what you learn when you participate in standardization. And then there is post-standardization. To really make that impact, to get market share. We are saying 10%. We are 20% of the population. Ideally, we should aim for 20% global market share, at least 50% domestic market share. Where are we? Even in domestic market share, in phones we are nowhere, right? Even in assembled phones like Lava and Micromax, we have failed. And we didn't learn from Micromax to fix the problem for Lava. We are doing a BSNL deployment, but what awaits us in terms of SEPs, we don't know. We are walking the path and we learn as we go, right? So, post-standardization is its own game, and we are just getting there. Pilots, deployments, POCs, certifications, open source. Open source has a very important role to play in post, and we don't understand open source today. Okay. So what's the way forward? So as I said, standards-driven research, and how do we perceive standards-driven research? The definition standards-driven research, when you are defining your research problem, are you aware of what's happening in the world of standardization? When the professor and his student are defining the research problem, if they are aware of the standards roadmaps are being defined for next 10, 20 years, is it that difficult for the professors to become aware where the roadmap is and link those research problems to that? Or ask the PhD student as a part of his discovery to also go and attend some standards meetings or study the roadmaps and link and prepare. As the students do this entire survey of all the papers and publications in their area of research, why can't they also study the patents and the standards roadmaps in their area of research and draw a link to that, right? So now let me dwell, you know the NIRF ranking that everybody vies for? We have 2,500 institutes, engineering institutes in this country. The top 300 are all that NIRF looks at, lists. And the top 100 is what it ranks, okay? And the data that is available for top 300, more than 3.5 lakh publications, more than 35,000 of those publications are high citation index. Why don't we have patents out of these? That's how China got its 1.6 lakh. Everybody who published did a patent first before they published, right? It's very easy for us to do that, right? So talking about this, okay, Brajesh Mishra is here, Lakshmi is here from CDOT, and Professor Nilesh Mehta, and the CEO of Lekha Wireless. We tried to involve startups. We had a committee which we dwelled over exactly this, and there is a paper. How many pages is that paper, Brajesh? About 100 pages. 100. We have studied the entire. What are the issues at DPIIT? We called the experts from DPIIT and any standard from MIT, from all the startup community, everything that's happening in India today to enable standards, at least on paper, okay, and what the ground realities are and how we can work on this. There is a very detailed report, and we have gone to the level of putting numbers to actually calculate the budget of what it will take on a year-to-year basis to make this change, okay? And we would, like to encourage this platform to take advantage of the work that we have done. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. So after listening all of them, let me have one question to each, and afterwards we'll open the discussions, right? Because ultimately it's for you, and you shall get the highest benefits. In the entire process, what we understand, the participation is comparatively less in the different stages of the standard making bodies globally due to the cost factors and all. So let me share some data in respect of the government initiatives. With respect to the research relating to the ITU, government has decided to give 1,000 PhD programs sponsored by the DOT. So that is something coming up. Right. And you also heard from the real examples that from our neighboring country or the countries which are having the highest number of the standard SAPs which are coming up, we have hundreds plus participants. We do have the students coming with the small laptops, sitting silently, not talking to each other, right? And you will find in the whole discussion of about 1,000 persons, 3-4 countries are there which are occupying more than 70% of the space. And the countries like us, we go 1, 2, I think hardly we touch 2 digits. Fortunately, I think from 2020 onwards, we are in the scale of that number. So, since I'll also share one thing, almost all the study groups which are there, we have the different leadership positions. In other countries, they are being held by the professors, especially from the countries which we are talking of the patents. So with that background, may I have a question on behalf of all of you to Professor and Dean, Dr. Rajesh, that what kind of the environment you expect from the government as an ecosystem to have similar number getting participated from the different institutes under the umbrella of our beloved country, India. Please.
The first thing that I want to highlight is that as the dean of an institution, one of the things that I ensure is that I fiercely protect the freedom of my faculty members to choose the problems that they want to work on. I think the scientific and technological progress depends on that particular freedom, and I think our faculty members should be the ones that understand and figure out where there are gaps, and they will pick those problems and work on them. In terms of the kind of activities that we could be engaged in to encourage our faculty members to take up questions of this sort. I think we have to look at a way by which these kinds of questions become powerful directions that our colleagues can take. For that, I think the only way we can essentially bring them together to understand and put their attention and time behind such problems is the kind of impact that it can make and the kind of the power of the ideas that can essentially get our colleagues to look at these kinds of problems. And I think in a university environment, we will need all kinds of research. We will need research all the way from activities that perhaps will find fruition in a standard 50, 60 years from now. That's what happened to low density parity check codes. And also activity that might make it to the standard immediately. I think the 1,000 PhDs in the direction of perhaps enabling standards-driven research is something that will get a lot of attention, and there will be some interest in this, I'm sure, and accordingly there will be activity towards this. But I think more importantly, the facilities that are being created towards maybe the test beds, etc., there I think is where a lot of action will come. And I think that action, where you're testing out your ideas, where you're testing whether this new mechanism or this revolutionary new idea, to what extent is it beneficial? Does the testbed bear these things out? I think that activity where you take from the theory to this testbed and see things happen, and I think that's the gap between knowing and doing. So if we have this ecosystem where people talk to each other from the theory to the practice, and I think if there are enough support elements for resources for PhDs and so on, I'm sure that there will be activity in this direction which will be beneficial towards standards essential research. Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, let me go to another professor. Since he is vice chair, I want to have some knowledge what he has acquired based in the working as the vice chair in ITU. How difficult it is to make other countries aligned with the proposals being submitted by the Indian proponents. Professor, if you can throw some light thereon.
Thank you. So my answer will be based on my limited experience as a vice chair during the last 2 years. Yeah, I became vice chair in 2022. So many times it's when we work in the standardization meetings that what happens that a lot happen, as Madam already pointed out, that in the offline sessions, and many times we term them as a drafting session, when you are actually drafting the future recommendation or the standard. And as our ITU colleagues will further elaborate, that in ITU there are different deliverables. So the first one is something called a report, which has to be approved on. And that is, I should say, moderately easy, and many times report accumulates a whole bunch of use cases. Now, when it comes to a recommendation or something like, if I make similarity with ISO, like ISO standard, which is equivalent to an international standard, then it is completely consent-based. As Madam already explained, there is not as such like technical evaluation, but it's agreement with each other. And many times it's happen at the personal level, that say each country has someone as a head of delegation, but then someone on his personal capacity is representing that country. And many times what I felt that we could not give, it's maybe I am right or wrong, but many times it comes to that the amount of time we are devoting to this particular activity. So say for being academic, I have many different duties as our colleagues in DOT, you also have multiple duties. And among all these duties, how many time we can devote to actually drafting the standard, and more importantly, as earlier pointed out, that how many we are aware of similar standards there. And many times when we work on this drafting session or build upon the consent, that I myself also many times count down that someone is referring that, hello, that standard, that W3 standard already exists there, or that ISO standard already exists there. And sometimes I wish that I could spend more time, or I can devote more personnel on that who is doing a more detailed literature survey, exactly the way we do for a research problem, that we spend students' time, we give our time, and that's how we came up with good research papers, etc. But if we can provide similar time on this, and that somehow I will now converge on answering the question that maybe at the country level consent we reach during the meeting, that say when the study group meet 3 times every year, and most of the time what happens that even before going to the meeting we try to build up consent before putting a recommendation on the consent list, and the main work happens during all this drafting session when we are building up consent. And that time many times we work more at the personal level, not at exactly at the country level. And of course the background diplomacy works at the final stage, that when you know that whatever has been decided before, that has been observed in the final consent. And yeah, I think so far I will say my experience is not so much difficulty at the diplomacy level, that I got fantastic support from many colleagues, not on a country specific, but on the, like from the same country I found someone is very much sympathetic to my cause, and from the same country another person is very much resistive to my effort. But before reaching this country level diplomacy, I think it's more important to develop consensus more at the personal technical level, and there also we can get upper hand if we get more involvement, so that it does not look like a one-man effort. That many times I find that a bunch of colleagues from different countries, or even from the same countries, they are just, it's the number game, that they are putting more voice in terms of number, while many times we are playing our game on our own. So yeah, that should be my answer, that many times I face that the resistance comes more from the technical level before reaching the country level diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pradipta. So one thing important for us to learn while participating, I think nicely had come up, that is, more than the technical work you do, you required preparation in terms of the pre-collaboration and pre-consultations to the meetings, right? And there, it's not you alone, you have to work with many other factors, and one of them is, it's not only the best of the technologies or the best of the ideas which gets converted into the standards. Many times there are geopolitical sensitivities which takes the upper side, and things may go in different directions. So there, my request would be with anybody who is participating at any level of the standardization, kindly take the relevant ministry into consultation beforehand, and be always in touch. So if there is any diplomatic support required from the all across the globe, that can be put in place at the right time. Now, Madam has shared her view that probably instead of the 10%, we should have targeted 20%. It's nice to learn, But as we all know that the 2030 IMT, which is 60, have the final timelines to be by the 2030. So I think, in fact, any standard takes lot of pre-standardization time, what she has already mentioned. I would make a request to her to explain how we can have large number of the participations of the women in this entire journey. Because even in today's discussions, of course, we are happy they are more than 30% here, but how they can lead, because they are, we always say they are the better brains and the better halves. So how can we make the better contributors to the scientific community coming from the women sector, if something can be thrown as the light?
I think the aspirations, there is no doubt that the number of women entering into the IT and communication space is on a rise, and it may not be in the top tier where there are certain barriers, and we need to zoom in and see what are the barriers that they struggle at 10%. So there's the 10% and then there's the 50%. You go to the next tier, they are 50%, right? And you go to the top tier, there's 10%. So what are the barriers we need to zoom in? I think there are enough examples out there on how MIT, the initiatives they've taken to break this barrier and how it has benefited them, right? So, so in terms of encouraging women and enabling them to get into standards, I think it's a similar thing. We just need to focus. We have Vinti here. She's a diehard. She's been, it's amazing how she's progressed. She's at IT Delhi, and she's gotten into the research community. Lakshmi is there. She's been spearheading the standards work at CDOT. So I think there is, now that you're saying 1,000 PhDs and all, maybe we need to work together to enroll our women PhDs there and make sure that they're there. So is travel a barrier? Maybe, I don't know. There is a initiative at ITU, right?
Yeah.
For women, and I think we need to leverage that. There are special scholarships and grants for women to participate. There's a networking and mentoring that women can get, and I think we need to use all of those. We need to use, and maybe some people like Lakshmi and Vinti and myself, we can take that as an agenda and specially focus and make it happen. I don't think it's that difficult. We can make it happen.
Thank you. So for ITU, I can say the agenda is to have minimum 30% of the women coming in all the meetings. And this may be the yardstick for the ITU team whenever we are sending. We can have this as a check and always can encourage the women participation. One thing what Dr. my friend sitting on left, right, Kumar shared, that the industry is normally more interested in making the revenue, right? We also heard from all of us, we have the large number of the papers coming as the scientific thing taking place in country. How much time you feel the country is yet to take to have all the research converted into the industrial kind of the research? So you do act here, get it deployed in the somewhere in the industry, and the whole society is able to reap out the benefits. So in your assessment, how you look to this journey?
Okay, so let me, the tendency is to give long answers, so I'll also give a longer answer. So first of all, I don't think we should say everybody should stop fundamental research and start doing applied or translational research, because if you do that, then there will be nothing left to translate after some time. So you need fundamental research. Okay. The only thing I would state is the following. You could, like LDPC or space-time codes, you could do something and sort of let it be, publish in transaction of information theory, and then somebody will pick it up decades later if it is useful, right? So here's an opportunity. We're trying to define the next generation of communication systems.
So, 2G was actually good GSM, then 3G had WCDMA. I think Viterbi and through Qualcomm made sure that their new technique, CDMA, became part of the 3G standard. Then OFDM came in 4G, Professor Paul Raj and MIMO was instrumental. Nothing happened in 5G, by the way. So here is 5G is just 4G repackaged with the name change. So 6G, we have 5 years away, 6 years away. You have an opportunity to design the next generation of communication systems. So if you are a communication researcher, you're looking at the cutting edge of technology. See if a new technique in communication can be part of the 6G standard. But there are restrictions. Why, the examples that Professor Rajesh gave are all to do with codes, okay, not something else. That's because in communications, you only standardize the transmit, not the receive, okay? So the receive is all secret sauce. How you build a better receiver is all secret sauce. So anyway, if you can come up with a new technology for communications better than OFDM, and there are some things being bandied about, this is the time to get in. So I just want to motivate that 1 or 2 people in the audience who may be working on the next generation of communication systems. There's an opportunity for you to see your name, so just for, if you want. Professor Paul Raj was that cover of Time. So if you want your name and photograph on the cover of Time, invent the next generation of communication systems that becomes the standard for 6G. So, but that requires fundamental work and some work in trying to translate it. Okay, if you choose not to do it, maybe somebody will do it in 7G, but if you can get it in 6G. That's what my long answer is.
Thank you. I think with this, let me open the house. You all are the finest brains of this country. So I request volunteers to be ready with the mic if anybody wants to go. Yeah, my friend from. I can go on dice, you can take this.
So I'm Aravind. I head the global blockchain practice at IDS. And now that 5G, it is support, the telecom networks are increasingly becoming convergent with other technologies. And I have explored, like coming from blockchain space, I have been exploring how DLT can be relevant with respect to the 6G standards. And second thing is the metaverse, right? I think the future of web is, with respect to user experience, is 3-dimensional. And I think that is where 6G and metaverse convergence happens. So first of all, as a company who is working in IT space, but looking forward to contribute to telecom side of the things, where do we start? So this is the first question. And second, understanding the standards, the life cycle and all is okay. That is one step. But how do we align on the standards process side of the things? And indeed, we as a company collaborated with Symbiosis, Pune, SIDTM. And indeed, we also submitted our proposal and we have gone all the stages of that 6G, Bharat 6G vision. So if someone from DOT, I would like to also know status of what is happening on that side. Thank you.
Thank you. So you want to point out the question to someone or?
Anyone who can take.
Okay, sir. Let her answer, but the part which is relating to DOT, let me attempt. Right. First thing is how to participate into the various standardization making bodies, especially ITU, since we are talking of the ITU today. So my request is, first of all, get yourself registered into the relevant study group, national working group, which is working on that specific field, whether it's DLT or metaverse. This is being taken care by the Telecom Engineering Center. My friend, Mr. Avinash, is likely to be here. He would have got busy somewhere, but he's here in Bangalore today. Coming tomorrow. Okay, fine. So Mr. Avinash Mittal is there. He will tell you what is the relevant group, or otherwise you can reach to us. We will find you out. Whatever contributions you want to make, You can submit through that. We will have the deliberations within the country and get represented into the relevant group at the ITU. And during discussion, whatever is required, we may have position holders, we may not have the leadership therein as the group, but as a country, we are there to support you whatever you want to. If you want to do anything within the 3GPP, we request yourself to get in touch with the TSDSI as well as in the Bharat 6G mission, so you can get those inputs appropriately, right? Specific to the two products you mentioned, your digital laser, metaverse. In the forthcoming WTSA, we are going to have 3 papers on the 3 different technologies, right? And which are going to work with the convergence, that is the AI, metaverse, as well as your blockchain with the DLD. Yeah. And a specific use case also one country has proposed, I can't name here, that is in the digital identity, use of DLTs in the digital identities. And another country has mentioned to work with the same technology for tracing the mobile phones, or I should say the user devices all across the globe. So you have the lot many opportunity there is. I think Ms. Pamela Kumar has something to add upon. Kindly add.
So I think that was good advice, and how do you get started? I think in this blockchain space, one of the organizations that you may want to connect is IDRBT. IDRBT Hyderabad. They have been making a lot of contributions at TSDSI and also taking them to global standards. But the key is what, as Mr. Shakya, you need to have a mentor and a coach. Okay? So now we have a few in the country now, a few who have gone through this cycle. In the early stages, I know one of our startups, they started, it took them 2 years to just come attend the meetings before they could even make one contribution. Start with the first contribution. And as a part of that, they started at TSDSI, attending the TSDSIs. So you need to dedicate some people, right? Who will, who are learning the rules of the game, who are learning how to play this game, right? And unlike other games where everything is written, there's a lot of unwritten stuff here, right? And find a mentor and a coach. That's very important. Once you become part of these NWGs and the SGs in TSDSI, you will be able to identify who are the right mentors and coaches for you. But IDRBT would be one you should tap into.
Thank you, Madam Kumar. And next question, please. Kindly introduce yourself so it will be easier for others to understand.
Thank you, sir. I'm Saurabh Khare from Nokia. So I'm also a TSDSI Voice Chair for Security Group. I'm also a delegate for 3GPP. So I know both sides of the story, 3GPP side and the TSDSI side. And what ma'am rightly said, the issues what she highlighted, academia, the one person is traveling, next person is traveling. I've seen these issues and fully agree on that part. So I'm not repeating that, but I would like to highlight 2 parts of our neighboring country where they are leading, which my observation, maybe my personal observation. So they are academia, companies, all do collaboration together. And they come to some standards body with a big force. You see 6, 7 companies for one country, they are all talking about the same thing, which is currently missing in India. What is happening, we have lots of good, brilliant talent professors, they are doing research on their own. And when they go to standards, because just one person is talking about one thing, nobody's going to agree on that. We need to collaborate. How we do it, that's a pre-standardization work, which we have to do beforehand, which is currently missing in our academia and different bodies, which is a first feedback which I want to provide. Second is post-standardization work. Because this collaboration is missing, so what is happening? One person is traveling to a meeting, he understood something, but that knowledge is not spread. So you got to know the problem there, what they are discussing, what the problem is. This knowledge has to be spread among the researchers, which is currently missing. If you spread it clearly, They will prepare the solution, they file the patents. Next time you get more strength and go there. So that knowledge sharing part among the different academia and companies are missing currently. That's what my question or suggestion.
Okay, I thought you were coming with the questions.
Yeah,
But
since he didn't have a question, can I ask him a question?
no, you can ask, but let the chance be there to audience. But just to reply to you, few steps government has taken. One is with regard to leadership positions, whatever country had. I don't think in last 2-3 years we had any difficulty in sending the person as many times as required. Right. For all the research institutes, the government has already taken a decision that they can represent from the government funds given in the specific project, and they can go as many times as they wish to. We have only concern with respect to the one, attending any private person on behalf of the government. That is, I think, under consideration, and we are trying to find out the possible solution. Because as per the government norms, there are specific restrictions, may not be right to discuss in the public domain. Right, so that part will be taken. In government, yes, there is a cycle that more than 4 visits in a year, officers are not allowed. But the ITU has come out with brilliant idea of running all the meetings in the hybrid mode. So even if somebody is not able to physically make out, you can have 1 or 2 representatives going. That I do not mean that I don't want to have 100+ representatives there. We wish to have 100+ representatives there, but as on day, those facilities can be taken care. That is what I mean. Something coming from this side, it looks that probably only the left has heard the discussions, or you feel this is the more brilliant side?
Everything seems very clear.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling. Rajesh ji.
थोड़ा लैंग्वेज चेंज कर सकते हैं सर?
Your wish, sir, always. We are proud.
ये थोड़ा सा अलग टाइप की ये बात मैं बोल रहा हूँ. हमारे तमाम टॉल क्लेम्स इंडियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट में 5G, 6G, maybe 7, 9G, we are struggling current 4G situation कि कहीं सिग्नल्स नहीं है, कहीं सर्विस नहीं है, और अभी 2-3 बार हम लोग डिस्कनेक्ट हो गए. एक ये प्रॉब्लम. दूसरा, हम कहीं उठाया सर ने कि माइक्रोमैक्स लावा फेल कर गया हमारा. हम कह सकते हैं कोई होंगे यहाँ तो दुखी होंगे, वो अलग बात है. हम मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के इसमें बहुत पीछे जा चुके हैं. एक भी बड़ा नाम इंडियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट में नहीं हो, मेटा हो, गूगल हो, फेसबुक हो, ट्रेडिंग व्यू हो, एवरीथिंग में हम कहीं दिखाई नहीं पड़ते ग्लोबल फेनोमेना. हमारे रिसर्च हमेशा बताते हैं कि हमारे एसोसिएट्स, हमारे रिसर्च स्कॉलर्स, कंट्रीब्यूशंस, कई टर्म हैं इसमें, वो सब क्वाइन अप होते रहते हैं. लेकिन हम एज कॉमन ऑर्डिनरी सिटीजन ऑफ इंडिया, अलग डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ टेलीकॉम से अलग करके देखें तो हमें ये फील होता है कि हम बहुत पीछे हैं, हमारा शोर ज़्यादा है. कहाँ हम लैग कर रहे हैं, इसका कुछ रिसर्च ये होता है क्या है, ये स्टडी हो पाती है ना. हम अभी हमें कहा गया था कि मिसाइल टेक्नोलॉजी और साइंस टेक्नोलॉजिकल इसमें हम बहुत अपग्रेड कर गए, शायद अभी भी वहाँ पीछे हैं. ड्रोन में हम कहीं नहीं हैं अभी. ये कहाँ जो साइंस टेक्नोलॉजी के सब हमारे अभी स्टारवर्ड, हम कहाँ लैग कर रहे हैं, कहाँ हमारी परेशानी.
Thank you. I think very good question. And okay, so there is a directive. Let the professors handle it. And since we all are colleagues, let us not have.
So I'll try to respond to some extent. I think the question is about where are all the gaps in our research? How come the big names that we hear are all coming from outside? And what can we do to address these gaps? I think the first thing to also recognize is that there are some successes. Successes are few, but I think there are some successes as well. I think if you look at vaccines, for example. The kind of vaccine manufacturing that we have been able to do has been amazing. We have been able to be the generics manufacturing for the world. I think those are all amazing, stunning successes. I think there are, in terms of cutting edge research, there are challenges. And I think the challenges are in many fields. The way we have to address those challenges is, I think we have to pick a few important topics where we see urgent and immediate need and address those. I'll give a few examples. Technology, communications technology has revolutionized the way we are connecting with each other, and I think it has the potential to be able to provide education at a distance. And that is something that we need in India, and therefore the communication technologies that we develop are things that we could be focusing on. And I think that's exactly what is happening. 1,000 PhDs to be able to drive the standards, to be able to get more technology that's closer to what Indian needs are, to defining what our requirements are, to be able to cover every corner of India, and so on. I think that's an important activity, and I think we should be looking at what our needs are and addressing that. The other thing that we should be looking at is our health problems. We have, as a public health, there are several challenges that we face, and we should be looking at what kind of technological solutions we need to address our public health issues, what kind of, maybe the artificial intelligence that's coming out there as something that a lot of people are speaking about today. We have to adapt it. We have to discover how to use it, or we have to invent new things to solve our public health problems, which might be diabetes, which might be hypertension, which might be cardiovascular diseases. 22 crore people are suffering from cardiovascular diseases. So I think we have to identify those problems and come up with technologies for those. The other two things I would say are sustainable transportation, cities development, and also agriculture. These are all things that we have to look at and solve problems ourselves to be able to make a dent. And I think if we focus on problems that affect us, then the solutions that we developed, though local in context, I think there are so many other places in the world that can learn from us. So I would say that, yes, there are gaps. Yes, we are not the top in many of the things that you highlighted. But if we turn our attention to the problems that we have and think about technology to address those issues, I have a feeling that in the next decade or so, there will be technologies that you will be speaking about which came from India. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is a brilliant answer, giving the positivity and hope. And just to have the more light mood, internationally we are visible in few technologies as well, which are proven UPI, best of the world, and being followed by multiple countries. Aadhaar being followed by more than 12 countries. So yes, I think we had taken good start. As Secretary Sir told, that new offshoots are coming. Let us see, the fruits will come in due course. Since I am approaching end to the time, let me express my sincere gratitude. Okay, now, you all, otherwise also I was expecting at least one question from the woman side. So
Okay.
you all have the rights.
So my question to the gentleman from Nokia, that Nokia and Ulu University have a very strong relationship in the telecom sector, and the government of Finland has also nurtures that. Sitting in Nokia, what is your observation? Can you share how that whole triad works, and is there something we can learn from them?
Difficult.
Sorry, ma'am, but I'm not much involved in that side. I'm purely working in. We are collaborating with Bangalore. I'm based in Bangalore.
Yeah. So our request is you can gather some information and share often to us, especially.
But just to add, Nokia is doing collaboration with IISc. We are doing the projects, and other IIT Bombay also we are doing a collaboration. So collaboration is is started now, this year only. But Ulu and Nokia, I guess they are doing it for a long time. So, but they have lots of collaboration, what I know, and they do a research together. Researchers come in Nokia, they sit, they do research together, and then Nokia delegates who are representing coming to a 3GPP meeting. But research happens together. So those kind of collaborations are there, which is currently not available in India.
Thank you. So since we are approaching, or in fact we had already touched the timeline given to us, so let me take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to all the panelists who had been very live, knowledgeable, and could keep all of you in the good mood. And thanks my sincere to all of you as well, because without your patient hearing and learning, probably we would have not been as successful as it is. With this, I would like to say only one part which we all used to speak together in the schools. In the entire discussion, one thing had come common, that is the working together, joining together. And I think nothing better than this Sanskrit phrase can come, that is, Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahe, Tejasvina Vadhitamastu, Ma Vidvisa Savahe. Right? With this, thank to all of you, to the organization and ISC. Thanks again to all. Bye.
Thank you so much. A huge round of applause to all the panelists. And we have a small token of appreciation for all of you. I would like to invite Ms. Das to please join us on stage and hand over the mementos. To Dr. Sivarajan, CTO Tejas. Next to Dr. Rajesh, IISc. Next to Dr. Pamela Kumar from FSID. And last but not the least, to Professor Biswas from IISc. So I think I'd just like to say that Professor Biswas has just come in from the US today. He must be totally, I'm sure, jet lagged, and we are truly grateful. And of course, to our kind moderator, Dr. Shakya. And if we can assemble for a group picture, that would be really nice.